Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session. Um, we're really excited to have each of you at this session. This is a session where we'll be talking about how you can do package-based development on Salesforce DX. I am Dilip Berkey. I'm the product manager, and I have the privilege of having John Daniel, who is the lead platform architect for Morgan & Morgan. One of the things that we've been discussing for a while is it will be great if we can have a customer come and talk about their journey with respect to DX, and we are very excited that John is with us. And before I get started, a quick show of hands if you're familiar with Salesforce DX. And okay, that's awesome. So my section of slides will go fast. This session primarily answers the question, attempts to answer the question. We know Salesforce DX, we like it, but we have a lot of metadata in our org. It's in an unpackaged state. How do we make this journey? All this package-based development feels good, seems good, but what's the steps? What's the recipe for me to make the transition? And the great thing is John and his team have made this transition. So the whole purpose of this session is to open this up for them to share their journey. What did they do? How did they go about doing this? So that we can use this to offer some kind of a recipe in terms of how you can get moving. There's a quick forward-looking statement. We will most likely be talking about technology that's already there, but we will end up talking some future-looking technology, so it helps. In terms of DX, I will go through this really quickly because most of you said that you're familiar with Salesforce DX. The 4 core values when we think of Salesforce DX is make it very easy for large teams to collaborate and develop apps. We want a model that is prescriptive where we say, you know what, this is how we think you should do application lifecycle management, but at the same time, it's open in the sense that you can come with the tools of your choice. For example, source-driven development is very important to Salesforce DX, but we don't have or we don't offer a version control system. You can come with a version control system of your choice. We talk a lot about continuous integration, but we don't prescribe that you have to use Jenkins or Travis. So it's an open model where you come with your tools and with your technologies to build on this. Automated delivery, something around continuous integration, continuous delivery is very important to DX, and you will see how John's team is doing that. And the last thing is enterprise ready. We always ask this question. Is Salesforce DX ready to meet the needs of enterprises? And we are working hard to make sure that it meets that bar. In terms of what DX does, very quickly wrapping up, and I know most of you know about this, is the version control system is the source of truth. In terms of the development stage, we have the Salesforce CLI that provides commands for most of the ALM operations. We have Salesforce extensions for VS Code that provides a really rich IDE. Again, you're free to use other IDEs you're comfortable with. In terms of environments, you're already familiar with different flavors of sandboxes, but as part of Salesforce DX, we've introduced the concept of scratch orgs, which make creation and deletion of environments very easy, but the click of a command. And you can see that by using these 2 different types of environments, you can have a much better development process. All this leads to better continuous integration, continuous delivery. And you'll see that I'm having both packaging and chain set here, and it's a deliberate thing. There are use cases where you'll continue to use chain sets. While this session is primarily about how we can do a package-based development model, we'll continue to support and work and optimize DX for both these development practices. So in terms of what's an unlocked package, like I'm sure you've heard about packaging to developer control packages. This is the term that we are using now to refer to packages that are designed primarily keeping customers in mind. And if you're anybody that's not developing an app for AppExchange, you're a system integrator, you're a consultant, you're a customer, unlocked packages is a single package type that you can use to develop and deploy. And it caters to 2 key use cases. One, you're building a net new app or functionality and you want to deploy it to your production instance. You'll use packaging as a mechanism, and you'll soon get to know why that's a better mechanism. The second thing is you have a lot of metadata already present in your org in an unpackaged state. How can you go about organizing them? So packaging satisfies or caters to both these use cases. In terms of benefits, and I'll quickly ramp them through, is source-driven development. The same Salesforce DX metadata that you use for your end-to-end DX flow, you can use it with packages. One of the fundamental tenets of packaging is iterative version-based development. You can create different snapshots of the package, which we refer to as versions. You can install these versions in your production instances, and at any given time, you can know across your production instances and sandbox orgs what version of the package is installed. You can install, you can upgrade, and you can do a lot of iterative-based development using packages. For those of you that are familiar with managed packages, which are designed for ISVs, we, by design, enforce a lot of restrictions in terms of what changes you can make. But this is designed primarily keeping customer use cases in mind. So the model is very open and flexible. You can add, remove, update metadata very, very seamlessly with unlocked packages. All of this leads to a much richer and simpler continuous integration, continuous delivery. The other thing that we keep hearing is when you do modular development, it's very important for you to handle dependencies. Like if you're going to break up your org into multiple packages, it's essential that you can express and enforce dependencies. And packages support that. You can specify dependencies among packages, and you can have multi-level dependency management. And all of this leads to not only deploying net new functionality using packages, but also organizing your existing metadata using packages. And this is the model that most of you use, where you do a change set-based development, where changes get promoted from one type of sandbox or other type of sandbox. With the package-based development model, your version control system is a source of truth, and you'll use scratch orgs primarily in the development phase, and as you start getting into build, you'll create the packages and use them for building and testing purposes. With this, I will hand over to John, who's going to talk about his journey when it came to package-based development.
Thank you, Dilip. I appreciate it. First of all, I'd like to say, wow, this place is totally packed. Thank you very much for coming out. I say thank you now, because it's probably a good thing. As Dilip said, my name is John Daniel. I'm the lead platform architect for Morgan & Morgan Law Firm. I have been in technology architecture development for a little over 20 years. I've been in the Salesforce arena for about 7.5 years, somewhere in that range. During that time, I worked for consultancies, product development, and my current role is the architect for a large firm. So, Morgan & Morgan, just a quick overview. Morgan & Morgan, like I said, is a law firm. Our web address is forthepeople.com. It was founded by John Morgan some 30 years ago. We are the largest personal injury attorney firm in the nation, bar none. We have offices up and down the East Coast and in the Midwest. Currently, we have just over 350 attorneys on staff. Total employees count, case managers, everybody is just over 2,500. We handle about 1 million calls every year, people calling in, and we're signing up approximately 100,000 new cases and new clients every year. So when you hear about Morgan & Morgan, this is why we're in Salesforce big time. Just a little bit about how we're using Salesforce. The Salesforce platform we use to manage our intake process. Think of it as the lead management use case. Intakes for us is everything from calling 1-800-Morgan & Morgan to the point where we say, yes, we'll take you on as a client. We have 3 different call centers. We use Salesforce to manage our investigation teams that go out and verify things. And we have a matter management process, or basically the way to think about it is our case management system. So that's powered by litify.com. We are big Marketing Cloud users, and our team size is a team of 8 right now. 5 admins and declarative developers, and we only have 3 developers, including myself. Just a little bit of stats. We're not the biggest Salesforce org in the world. I'd say we're somewhere between medium and large. We're definitely not Herculean epic size. But these give you a little bit of stats about how big, how much we're dealing with. And for 3 people, 3 programmers especially, we've got our work cut out for us. So with that, we're going to talk about our journey. We'll cover strategies for organizing your code base, how we manage the dependencies between those packages. We'll talk about the transition and how we came from an unpackaged source code to a series of not managed packages, but unlocked packages. We'll talk about how do you manage the metadata across the packages, because there's little thorny issues that you got to work out. And then we'll get into how far we've adopted this and what our plans are continuing, and then benefits, wrapping it up with what we're seeing already as far as gains. All right, our starting point. It is September 2016, and like I said, we manage our intake process on the Salesforce platform. September 16, we had just finished the launch of this intake process, and we had a lot of issues. First of all, it was a very large, unorganized Salesforce org. We had spent 6 to 9 months prior to that just going absolute frantic pace, and lots of different things going on, lots of contractors coming in, working on our code base. We had multiple architectural thoughts. So I don't know if anybody could relate to that, but it was just various different ideas about how to get things done. There were hundreds of Apex classes, a lot of metadata, and our team that was left didn't have a complete understanding of what was going on. We had confusion around the metadata dependencies. Our deployments were very problematic. I have spent many long nights getting things completely into the change set to make it work. And we had set up a rudimentary setup around CI, just a basic, a bulk amp push of everything, and it was just one Git project. I'm seeing some heads nod, so good, I'm glad. And onboarding for new developers was, let's just not even go there. It was painful. Does that sound familiar to anybody at all? I hear it. Yeah, there's some hands here. Good. I'm talking to the right audience. October 2016, Dreamforce. 2 big things. DX was announced. Packaging was announced. The promise of source code as the source of truth. That was music to my ears. My background of Java development, and anybody know about Apache Maven and Maven dependencies and stuff like that? Show of hands. Yes, I was like, this might actually be possible going forward. But the big question was, how do we get started? So now, the first thing we had to do was understand and organize our code base. First thing we did was identify the custom applications. And before I go any farther, I'm talking about if you're in the classic UI, the upper right-hand corner, the pick list of the applications. If you're in the Lightning UI, it's the tic-tac-toe box that exposes all the applications. I'm talking about those custom applications that you built for your team. You had to identify those. For us, it was obviously the intake management. That's a whole series of business functions that we have to deal with. We have matter management, case management along that line. We even have marketing analytics, things that we're dealing with ROI analysis and stuff like that. And so we knew that if we started to break out our code base into modules, these are some of the modules that are going to stand out. We looked at it in a different direction. We started identifying and grouping those modifications that we have made to AppExchange ISV packages. Things like DocuSign, Financial Force Accounting, Draw Loop, and for us, Litify.com's matter management package. These were customizations that we knew they were specific to that particular ISV, and so they were sort of dependent, if you will, on that ISV package. We had a couple of open source libraries, things like the Financial Force libraries of Apex Common and Apex Mox. Everybody familiar with those? Maybe? Good, decent show. But there are various open source frameworks. If you haven't checked them out, I highly encourage you to. They solve a lot of problems for us. And then we also started looking at specific third-party services that we were talking to on a normal basis, things like Twilio, things like referral networks for lawyers, and Google Analytics. All of these were integrations out of our org that we had developed custom code around. And again, all of these presented themselves as real nice candidates to modularize. As we were starting to pull all this together, we started realizing that we needed our own base package. Now, when I say base package, it might be the lib, it might be the foundation package, whatever it is that you want to give the name, it's basically the crux that everything depends on. And so for us, it was mmlib, okay, Morgan and Morgan lib. But it had all of our common interfaces, had all of our enhancements and customizations to custom source frameworks. So we have some modifications and enhancements on the Apex Commons, Apex Mox frameworks, and this is how we did it. We had other frameworks that we had built. But we knew going forward this was going to be our foundation package, and everything that we built from here forward was going to depend on this. And we also made a rule that this had nothing to do with SObjects. This has nothing to do with the data layer, because there are times when you don't actually do anything with data layer, and you don't want to depend on that. But then also sort of came to mind that, we need a common package. And when I say common, it's really it's a package that we basically make responsible for governing the account, the contact, the user objects. Those standard objects that get a lot of work, get a lot of interaction, and there are some basic commands about it. So we knew that we needed to group at least the minimal amount of functions into this common package. Again, everybody was probably going to depend on this. We made sure that this common package depends on our foundation mmlib package. But it does not depend on any ISV package at all. This is important, and we'll draw this out a little bit later. So pretty soon, all of our packages started to fall into place. And we had this big map of all these different things that we had identified, and it became clear to us that these modules are the basis for where we're going to divide our packages. So that's the first thing. We figured out kind of what we wanted and identified potential packages from there. Now we started getting into, again, organizing the code base by purpose. And when I say by purpose, I'm talking about really two different things. There's a book called Advanced Apex Programming by Dan Appelman. There's another one called Force.com Enterprise Architecture by Andy Fawcett. If you have not read these, please do yourself a favor, go buy them now and read them. They are fabulous books talking about, Dan draws out the concept of how the importance of modularizing your code base, centralizing your code base, and the techniques and examples that he's done. Andy Fawcett takes a different stem, and his book is a lot about separation of concerns, and those concepts teased out originally by Martin Fowler in his great work about principles of enterprise architecture. But this is an adaptation to the Salesforce.com. These are great ways to organize your code by purpose. And so within each package, we knew we were going to organize all of our code into simple things like selector classes. The class's primary responsibility for making queries against a specific object. Domain logic about a specific object. Service tier logic, the aggregation of stuff. Presentation and API. These were the general principles that we started organizing all of our code base to match. So this is good. We had all of our packages kind of identified and modules identified. But how do we fit them together? How do we manage the dependencies? So we drew a map of all of these things, laid them out, and we started drawing lines. So we laid out our mmlib and our common and our business applications and really all of the things that we had available. And then we just started drawing lines. The lib depends on the Apex commons. And then, common depends on the mmlib foundation. But intake depends on common. Because intake needs to access the account object. Intake needs to access certain things about the contact object, the user object. But also, we knew that intake would depend on lib as well. And so we just started drawing these lines. Marketing and matters. We knew that those were going to be downstream type dependencies for the intake. We know that one use case that we have is once we get all your information and we say, yes, we're going to take you on as a client, we convert the intake, and it becomes the matter responsibility. So we identified all the dependencies that we had available amongst those packages, but we also included all of the dependencies onto the custom or the ISV packages and the AppExchange packages. That's important as well because you'll need to manage that. And let's see. So now we had this big map, and from a time frame perspective, like I said, this is probably December 2016 for us. Salesforce DX was announced, packages are coming. Dilip, Mr. Jeff in the back, they're working frantically to make this a reality, but we are being told it's at least a full year before it really becomes viable. So we needed to start doing some things to migrate us and put us in the best position to start adopting things when Salesforce was ready to go. First thing we did was strictly adopt a naming convention. Everything that we had was named under basic two concepts. The first one was, okay, we've identified all these packages. Does this metadata element belong in which package? So everything we have now has the prefix of the package that it belongs to. And then going back to the details around how to organize your code within the package, we completed the name of the class to be something meaningful and very specific about its purpose. So obviously, you know this is the account selector. This is all about the querying of the account object, and it belongs in the common package. So basically, we've spent a year refactoring, and I tell you right now, for 3 developers, really it was actually 2 developers for most of the year. We picked up a 3rd one last fall. We spent the year just slowly refactoring and going through our daily lives. We've got all the stories, the features, enhancements coming through, but the whole time, anything new was adhering to this. So now, fast forward to Dreamforce 2017, packages are now ready. And we look at our code base, and it's really, the metadata is really telling us exactly where it needs to belong. This is important because during that migration time, we would do code reviews like everybody else. And there was one question that, we don't have everything in a package yet. And what you're looking at is a method of a class that we actually have not packaged yet. But I can take a look at the code, and I can immediately tell what package it eventually will belong to. So the dependencies shown here are the mmlib. This object exists and is brought in by the mmlib package. We know that it's installed because everybody depends on it. The matters, that or the matter prefix, and the matters is a domain object in this case. We know that this belongs to the matter package. We know that matter depends on the mmlib. And the third one is the lawsuit. This code actually exists in quote-unquote the lawsuit package that we have available. We know that in our case, lawsuit depends on matters. And so we know that this works. Now, if I had seen something with the word prefix of marketing, I would have rejected it outright. We haven't completed our marketing package physically today. But if somebody accidentally started depending on it, because this code is still just part of the large soup of single code repository, and we've got to start making sure that we don't have too much of a thorny mess. So not only have we been working to adjust all these things, but we've also been working to keep things straight and organize and push things out as much as we could, keeping them separate over this past year. The other thing about the transition is you've got to make effective use of continuous integration. So we had been doing, like I said, a single push Vant. We knew that wasn't going to be acceptable. Salesforce CLI is available now. Packaging is available now. So December of 2017, we stood up our own Jenkins server. And we started creating the build scripts to manage, how do we actually do the builds of CLI? And then how do we manage the dependencies? Because, when you install when you create a package, say our common package, you've got to make sure that the Scratch org that it builds in has the lib package deployed to it. So you've got to work out that progress. We had to start small. We started with the Apex Common, the Apex Mocks. Foundationally, those are the absolute bottom root of our dependency model. And once we got those perfected, and then we started seeing how the dependencies could be managed and worked in, we went on to the mmlib, which depends on 2 things. Went on to common, which depends on 3 things. Then we started looking into how we were going to manage the progress going forward. Because now we've got all these packages that are starting to isolate into their own distinct code repositories. But I still have the remaining big monolithic code base that has everything else that's part of the code base. So our build jobs, like I said, the first one is all about CLI around the specific packages. Each package that we identify, we build those, and we manage the dependencies. The second build job that we had to deal with was the big honking everything else in the kitchen sink type job. Because that's still a metadata-based deployment, we actually gave it a Salesforce DX project file to list all the dependencies. And so what happens really is we now deploy all these dependencies, but then we just push via metadata deployment into the Scratch org. So we at least have coverage, and we at least have awareness if any of our packages are breaking things that haven't been packaged yet. And so we can sustain this for the duration of our transition. This is also very effective at revealing circular dependencies. Our progress has actually slowed a little bit because as soon as I started getting into the common package in late January, early February, all of a sudden I was like, oh, we have some things that are coming in from marketing and intake. Those should not be here. And so it took us some time to refactor those and push those changes out to production. Those circular dependencies have already been released, and that's already been deployed to production, but it paves the way to allow the package to come through correctly. Now we're talking about managing metadata across packages. So you've got to think about breaking down your standard and your custom SObjects. Classic example is the account object. So we made a basic statement that each package would be responsible for a single SObject. It would have responsibility for that SObject. It would have the selectors. We saw the account selector. It's in the common package. The common package has responsibility for it. So we knew that there were some minimal number of fields about the account object that we want, the standard fields, the name, the owner, the parent, et cetera, all the standard fields. But the account object can be influenced by packages that are deployed. Things like Financial Force will add many fields into the mix. Things like Litify's Matter Management added more fields. And then we knew that even our own packages would add more fields yet again. So the issue was, how do we account for these fields in our package, our common package, when the common package does not know about these fields? So this is how we solved it. We had our common, we had our lib. The common had the class common Apex account selector. That, if you know anything about the accounts Apex Commons framework, that actually depends on an SObject selector, but of course we've had our own customizations, and so we extend the mmlib SObject selector. So this alone generates an effective query of select ID, name, phone, et cetera, from account. But Matter will bring another field. Now, I did not make a base schema package with every field imaginable in my org as a foundation, because I did not want to carry that kind of weight. I wanted to make sure that if the field was added to an object, I knew exactly who or which package was responsible for it. Not every field in the schema is used by every package in the org. And so we didn't go for a base foundation schema model. We went for a dependency injection model. So how are we going to get the Matter create date on the account object? When I install the Matter package, that field is now present. How do I get that into the common account selector? And the answer is custom metadata type based dependency injection. So what I'm talking about, we added a custom metadata type into our lib package. We call it the SObject field set or field set inclusion. Then we added a field set in the Matter object. This field set's purpose is just to hold on to all the fields that the Matter package is bringing. Then we added a custom metadata record for the type that was decided in the lib. When you install the Matter package, the metadata record is installed. So the last change we did was over in the mmlib, the mmlib SObject selector. We modified that to quickly, every time a query is run, it dynamically assembles the fields that are available, and it also scans this custom metadata type. It looks for the records about the specific SObject type that we're dealing with, in this case the account, and it says, okay, I'm going to grab these field sets. And the Apex Commons framework is very good at injecting field sets into a query. And so now we've got an effective query of this every time the common account selector runs. We're injecting the dependencies. The beauty is there are some packages we know that are going to be short-lived in a year from now. And while Matter's not one of them, a year from now we're going to be positioned so that I can just basically uninstall the package and the query will revert back to what it is supposed to be. So it's a very nice, clean, elegant way of getting this done. We had another issue around inter-package communication. How do we trigger event logic downstream dependencies? So again, the use case is, again, the intake. We had the mmlib. And we had our other major business applications. And again, just for a reminder, the Matter and the marketing depend on intake. So we had a use case where we sign up an attorney, we sign up your client, and the attorney is retained, and our intake record is converted. Converted means we're going to now make it a case. The response to that is basically two things. One, in the matter, we build a matter record. It manages all the case from going forward. The other thing is about the marketing. We want to tally up various things about statistics and conversion ratios and so on. But since the matter and the marketing are dependencies of intake doesn't know what to do when it converts. So our answer here is dependency injection-based platform event subscriptions. We added a bunch of interfaces. The events consumer interface. Again, everybody depends on MMlib, so everybody has access to it. We added a custom metadata type. It's the event consumer subscription. This basically says who wants to subscribe to which event. We had the, backing up just a little bit, we had the platform events distributor in the MMlib as well. So if you know anything about platform events, you know that you can have an Apex trigger that listens to the platform event and responds. So this guy's responsibility is query all of the event subscription metadata records, find out who really wants this event, and basically it's a secondary pub-sub scenario. So in the matter side, we added an Apex class. This is our event consumer class. He extends, or actually that should be implements, my apologies. It's an interface. He implements the interface event consumer. This is what we want to, this is the logic we want to be handled when the event comes down. And we had a custom metadata record. It's the type that's over in the MMlib, the event consumer subscription. And he's basically saying, hey, for this intake event, and there's actually some more criteria available in our structure, for this intake event, I want you to run this class. And we actually went one step further, and the platform event distributor actually will take those classes and spin them up into separate queuable processes so everybody can go off on their own thread and be happy as lark. Same thing with marketing. The events consumer, we have our own event consumer, matter event consumer. Again, he should implement the events consumer interface, and we have the custom metadata record. So when I install the matter or the marketing package, all of a sudden these metadata records are in there, and the dependency injection is a snap. So our current status is we've got 3 unlock packages totally ready to go. We've got 4 more in progress. It's about 4 right now because I'm untangling some of these circular dependencies. Our best guess at it, we definitely identified 22 packages, so I have at least 22 different prefix namespaces. I have code under at least 22 prefix namespaces. I can easily identify my code base at this point. It didn't happen overnight. Again, we've been working on this for 1.5 years. And by the time we're done, we've mapped out probably about 70% of the code base. Probably when we're done, we're expecting to have just over 30 packages. Our CI process is running. It's perfected. It's handling the dependencies that we're talking about. There's an occasional tweak that I have to make, but for the most part, it's cooking now, and we're moving to this. And we've already got these dependency injection and platform events processes and these frameworks already live in prod. We don't have the packages, all the packages there yet, but we have these frameworks and processes already in place. So cutting over the rest of it's going to be a breeze. Things we're loving about DX and packaging, scratch orgs. Scratch orgs are a must. When I first started at Morgan & Morgan, like I said, we had gone through that large development project, and they were working from a development sandbox that was 9 months old. They hated me when I said, oh yeah, full copy sandbox UAT will live maximum of 5 weeks. They hated me. But I was like, no, we have to make sure that the sandboxes are 100% or as close as possible to what we have in production, and we can't have any kind of fluff. The developers got it worse because their development sandboxes live 1 week packed. And the only reason it lives 1 week is that we're releasing once a week every week. So we're refreshing a whole round of sandboxes. So when it came to scratch orgs, I was like, oh, yes, my DevOps time just went down considerably. Like I said, DevOps across the board is going down for us. The amount of time that I personally am investing, the Wednesday nights that I'm staying up late is going down considerably, and I'm excited about that. My wife is even more excited about it. We have a better understanding. Like I said, just that small snippet of code, we're able to see how things are starting to piece together. And it's giving us a whole better insight, and we don't have to understand everything at once. We can, onboarding is going to be a whole lot simpler because I can just focus on one package and then let that developer learn about that package and learn and understand it, but I don't have to give them the entire cake. There's tons of things that we want to, or say that we love about it, but this is only a 40-minute talk, so. Anyway, things we're loving to see and can't wait to see is a single command line to install all of our dependencies. You can appreciate with potentially up to 30 packages, we're going to be wanting that command very soon. Having said that, I'll put a plug in for, I just saw the talk with Dave Carroll and Thomas DeVort. The CLI plugins, the custom plugins you can do, I'm probably not going to wait now for Salesforce to release their own. I'll probably roll my own real fast and make this happen, because that was an awesome talk, by the way. But again, we're seeing things that we want to specify specific unit tests either within specific packages or whatever is unpackaged. We want a better way to mention or just specify the dependencies that we want to deal with. And right now, if you need to get to a unique dependency, it's that package version ID. You can have the alternate way of the package and a version number, but it's not unique because the branch also influences it. And there's still a question around transitive dependencies. Please don't bother with asking for that just yet, because I've been hounding these guys like crazy for it. So. But things are going to be coming about. But this is at least a start, and we're able to figure this out. So that is basically our journey in like 20 minutes. And with that, I will turn it over to Lee.
Hey, John, thanks a lot. This has been incredibly helpful, because one of the things that we were always thinking was it is very nice to have one customer come and talk about the whole journey, and John doing that has been incredibly helpful. The one key takeaway, I think, from this is the whole package development process, the adoption of Salesforce DX and package-based development model can be a gradual adoption process. Like, you don't have to do this on a single day. There's a gradual adoption thing, and hopefully this sets the recipe. I still want to make sure that we have some time for Q&A. Really quickly, we have a wealth of information. We have blogs, we have documents, we have Trailhead modules. We launched 2 new Trailhead modules to get solely focused on unlocked packages at Trailhead DX. We have a Trailblazer community where folks like John Daniel are very, very active. We can collaborate, you can post questions. So we would love to interact and collaborate with you in all these forums. With this, if you have any questions, there are 2 mics. Please feel free to come and ask us, and we'll stay after this session. We'll be outside so you can continue to talk to us.
Yeah.
Hey, great talk. I was curious about, for triggers, when you have some sort of synchronous logic like before triggers, how do you manage that across modules?
So what I did not even talk about was yet another type of dependency injection that we've incorporated. The same basic model. We put the foundation of the dependency injection inside our MMlib. We put a custom metadata record to deal with the subscriptions. The way we dealt with it is defined 2 interfaces, one for criteria, one for action. And each of the packages now can implement those, either the criteria or the actions. Basically, the criteria's purpose is give me the records, I'll filter them based on some condition, I'll spit out that. And so we run them through a series of criteria, and then what's left, we run through the actions. All of those are defined as custom metadata records in the proper order and there. So again, we bring all of the extra logic. So the matter is an easy example because it adds more logic to the base common account scenario. And while the matter is installed in our org, that logic comes about.
Awesome, thank you.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Question for you, Dalit. First of all, I've been using using DCP, using unlocked packages for a little bit now. It's quite enjoyable. Put a plug in for the community. It's super awesome. I mean, you're responding on there right away on it, so really appreciate that.
Thanks.
I have 2 questions that my company has posed to you on there, and I just kind of want a status update on them. One is on dependencies that have a password protection. So we have a dependency on a managed package that has password protection, and as we try to create a version, it doesn't allow us to create the version because it can't install that package when it's trying to build the version. So I was wondering on that piece, if we're any closer. I believe you had said summer 18 might be when that's coming out, but you may be able to get it out sooner. And then second was, we're still not able to put flows into our unlocked packages as we try to install them. It fails, and so we end up just using we convert it into an AMP package and just deploy through AMP.
Okay, I have good things to say. So for the first one about having packages that depend on other packages that have passwords, we have a solution in place. So we're almost in the process of rolling it out. So we will require that those dependency passwords be enforced when you're installing them in a scratch org, but not during the build step. So that should take away that issue. And regarding flow, I know there are a few bugs that we have already fixed, but again, mentioned me with your specific problem, and I want to make sure that that is getting fixed as well.
Awesome.
And both these things should come out in patches. But again, ping me and I'll tell you the exact
Awesome.
timelines.
Thanks.
Over here.
Yeah, how are you getting your declarative developers using and contributing to this process and managing their contributions to source control and development?
There's two things, basically. I'll say this, right now, they're not actively contributing. They're focused on Process Builder and Flows, and I'm watching Process and Builders and Flows specifically because they're a thorny mess as well. The other aspect is I'm just letting them stay and change that hell for now so they'll appreciate DX when it comes over. We're going to migrate them through, but we've got to get the developers ready and in a position, and we've got to get the foundation positioned. So I expect that we'll be transitioning our declarative people sometime this summer is where it'll be about.
So to add to what John said, when we started the whole Salesforce DX initiative, we started with the professional developers and the high code,
right.
but we are very much invested in making sure that admins have a very strong role in terms of how they can come into this process. So there are a lot of things that we're working on that.
Over here.
Hi, I know you said you're implementing the Financial Force libraries. I'm very familiar with that and with his books and so forth. At the time you started, edition 1 was out, and now edition 2, and those libraries have grown significantly.
Yes.
Have you transitioned to the newer libraries, is one of my questions. And two, what have you done with your packages in terms of the application config files and,
yes.
and those kind of things?
Exactly.
Is my questions because of all your different packages?
You're exactly right. So first of all, the first question was how are we managing the influx of all these new features and stuff like that? We forked those two repos into our own private area. We're managing them. We're bringing them in slowly as we want to, as we see some things, but basically we're working off our own internal copy at this point, but it has a path to draw it. The second one, and for those who don't know, the Apex Common framework has basically a simple application factory class, and it is responsible for taking all of you would map SObjects to selector classes, you map service interfaces to service impl classes. It's all about dependency injection that supports the Apex
You
mods.
also define your application.
You're defining your application. And so what we did, we created yet another custom metadata type record called the application factory metadata type record that supports those four concepts, the selector, the domain, the service, and the unit of work. And we define all those information, and again, when we install managed packages, so when the common package comes into the org, it has the record for the application factory for the common account selector, and it all just magically works.
Thank you.
So, yes,
Very good.
over here.
How did you deal with field level securities?
I'm sorry, what?
Field level security, FLS.
Field level security.
Field level security. We're moving as much as we can to permission set type model. We are still watching about profiles and how they'll emerge. I'm hearing good things from these guys about what's coming. It's not there yet, so it's still a progressive thing. We're still figuring it out and mapping it, but permission sets is definitely the first idea that we know we're going to go for, and we've been implementing those as well.
Mainly around when you are installing the package in a customer's org, and if there is any like constant upgrades, like a new field is created, and if you push the package out, obviously the customer is going to have an issue unless they select the field level security, right?
Yes.
So
again, you have permission sets in each of the various packages. Our admins are prepping to manage field set out assignments to everybody, And so once the field set assignments are done to everybody, as we push new versions, they already have the permission set, so the FLS takes care of itself.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
A lot of these ISVs push out their upgrades at a very frequent pace, right? Some of the ISVs we have, it's like 3 times a year, and patches are even more frequent. Have you had any pain in having upgrade issues of those packages because of unlocked packaging dependencies?
So the short answer is no, we haven't had the pain, and the reason is we're still pushing through. I mean, our adoption is we've got all these packages ready, we're testing them, and I've got it in the UAT environment, and our plan is May 1, we're going to push to prod with what we have. So I haven't experienced that yet. I'm sure that these guys have it covered, though. Absolutely, it's not going to be a problem. Especially this guy over here, he's going to cover it all. It's going to be great.
I think most times when ISVs push a package, they are, I mean, by design, they're not expected to break the customer's org. So if you have an unlocked package that depends on an ISV's package, I don't know, on paper it should not fail.
I don't know if I'm live. But
Okay.
Mike?
Excuse me.
Mike? His mic?
His mic.
the short answer is that they should not be able to push anything that breaks your org, and you would have the same issues with unlocked packages or if you had unpackaged metadata in your org. But the way the whole push upgrade is designed is that they cannot break anything that you depend on. They, of course, software has bugs, and if they had a bug, you could be impacted by that. But there's no difference in using an unlocked package versus unorganized metadata in your org. So, thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Could you talk a little bit about your version control strategy with the packages are using like one repo per package, and you mentioned too that you still have some of the rest of the unpackaged metadata, the happy soup that you have. Are you keeping that, like the rest of that in version control too as you move it over? How's that?
Everything is in some version control, in some repo somewhere. The unpackaged happy soup that I still need to siphon off is just getting tagged once a week when we deploy. The packages are getting tagged as we do full releases. And we're perfecting our process now that when we, and I'm going to perfect it with that CLI plugin too, that when we actually do a release of the package, we're going to augment that to go and do other things like making a get tag and pushing that and adjusting our dependencies in the project JSON. So that'll happen in the next 2 to 3 months maximum, somewhere in that range. But yeah, everything is being packaged. As far as version numbers, I could care less at this point. We're still technically in an experimental stage. But I mean, once we go GA, then I'll get really concerned about versions. But for the most part, as long as I can identify which package is installed and I can trace it back to the source control, I can see what Jira tickets were influencing it, I can see everything top to bottom about it from going forward.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I love your demo presentation on the work you did on the packaging. Very basic question. We do have thousands of classes in org. It's very difficult to generate some kind of UML diagram.
Yes.
To know how those classes are and what they do and kind of what method it has.
Yes.
So have you come across any kind of, or have you seen a need of generating a UML diagram where it will be easier for developers to come on board and see what all things are available
Sure.
than starting, like spinning a wheel again, right?
You've got to decide what works for your team. My team was small enough that we could just talk and work through some of these things. My code base was not massively large. Some suggestions like the dependency API that was announced yesterday. That's going to be great as far as understanding how the dependencies are working, and then you can extrapolate UMLs from there. I suspect just like Andy Fawcett built that plugin that we saw yesterday in the Visual Code, I think it'll be just a matter of time before somebody takes that information, digests it, and make it a UML diagram.
Yeah,
So.
we have a lot of difficulty in onboarding a new developer because he doesn't know any classes and he struggles to understand.
Everybody has that problem. Everybody has that problem. So,
Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
thanks. Hey,
Yes, sir.
I believe we are about 9 minutes over already. So we can be outside and we can continue this Q&A, but thanks a lot for coming to this.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John.